In this clip, we're going to look at the descriptive statistics, focusing on the measures of central tendency. So a measure of central tendency is a single value that attempts to describe a set of data by identifying the central position within that set of data. They are also classed as summary statistics, so you may hear them called that. These include the mean, which is by far the most commonly used, the median, and the mode. We include multiple measures because under different conditions, some measures of central tendency become more appropriate to use than others. So we're going to look at how you compute these measures of central tendency in Excel. Now, you may know this already, but it's good to cover and to refresh and just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So I have data here that are some random numbers that I generated. We'll call these the number of hours worked per week. So I have a label in the first row and then all the observations down here. So the first thing we're going to do is calculate the mean. So in Excel, you can either use the insert function, so you can click on that, go under the statistical categories, you can select average. Then for the range, you can select this range, the range of the data that you want to cover, and then hit OK, and that will calculate the mean for you. Another way you can do that is simply by typing in the equal sign and then average, and then in the parentheses, selecting these. So you would just type that in by hand instead of by pulling up the function thing. So what this is telling us is that the mean of this data is 41.39 or 41.4. So that's the average number of hours worked per week for these 43 workers. Now, the second one we'll look at is the median. The median is the centermost value if you arrange them all in order from lowest to highest. So it captures the exact middle. Now, if you have an odd number of observations in your data set, the median will be the one where half the observations are greater and the other half are smaller. If you have an even number of observations, you don't have that one single middle observation, so you take the average of the two centermost observations. Again, we can easily calculate the median in Excel. So this time I'll show you how to type it. So select the cell you want to use, equals bin median, and then just select the observations that you would like to include. Put a parentheses at the end. And it says our median is 44. So the number 44, one of these right here, is going to be our middle number of our data string. The final measure of central tendency that we'll talk about is the mode. The mode is the value that occurs the most frequently. So if we do the mode in Excel, we can do the same thing here. I'll select the function button again. Scroll down to the M to get mode. Something you see here is we have multi or single. So what we'll want to do is select multi just in case. If there are multiple modes, so say two numbers both appear 5 times, this version will select that. If you do single, it will only select one of them. And again, we can put in the number range here. So we select from 23 down to our highest number. And there it says our mode is 44. And 44 here appears several times, more than any other of the numbers in our data string. So mean, median, and mode, each of these tells us something different. The mean is often not one of the actual values that you have in your data set. So for our example here, let me go back to the data. We didn't actually have 41.39. It's calculated based on the data that we have. So it may not be the exact value. Median and mode, those are, well, median, half the time, if you have an odd number, it will be one of the values. Otherwise, it's also calculated. But mode will always be one of the numbers in your data set itself. So the important property of the mean or the average is that it minimizes the error in the prediction of any one value in your data set. So it's a value that produces the lowest amount of error from all the other values. It can be the best way to capture that exact middle number. However, it isn't always the case. So the mean can be vulnerable to outliers. So if you have one observation that's much larger, much smaller than the others, it can make the mean less accurate. The mean will be pulled in that direction. In that case, it makes sense to use the median. So because the middle number is less influenced by a small number of extreme observations. So if we go back to this example, let's take 61 and change it to say 100. The median didn't change, but we see the mean actually increase just from increasing this one value. So often when economists look at skewed data or when there is a small number of extreme outliers, they'll use the median instead. So if you look at when economists talk about income, they'll report the median income rather than the mean income because there's a small number of really high wage earners that'll pull the average in that direction. Now, mode is the most popular, the most frequent observations. Sometimes this can be really important, but usually it isn't the most important measure of central tendency.